Hey guys, Ben Painted. Today we're back once again for another video, and this time we are at Clay Pigeon Raceway for a little bit of practice in the Rotax that we purchased in 2023. Obviously we haven't been out in this car since the last time we came here, and it was absolutely torrential rain, and today is the complete opposite. A nice bit of sunshine, a little bit of cloud, but it is good weather for racing. So we are going to jump in, see what we can do. Obviously it's just for lap times today, not really racing anyone, so we're just out to have a bit of fun. I'm down here with Kinetica Racing teammates, Harley, Smith and Joseph Simcock. We're all going to be using the kart together just to see what we can do. So without further ado, we're going to jump into the footage. Now before we do that, if you do enjoy this video, can you please leave a like on the video down below, as I really do appreciate it. And if you're new to the channel, if you haven't already, make sure to hit the subscribe button, as it really does help me out. So with that in mind, I'm going to jump into the footage now and see what we get on with today. Jumping into the first session that we were doing then, guys, wanted to try and get out the pits as quickly as possible at the back, as to not annoy anyone else that was out on the circuit in front of us. Didn't want to get in the way or cause any disruption. So we come out the pits here, begin our first lap. Obviously this is the out lap, haven't been in the car in a few months, so we're going to see how we do. And immediately on the first corner we decide to take the kart for our very first and only spin of the day. So we got that done out of the way, and obviously the tyres were a little bit cold. The kart had been used by obviously Harley and Joe. As I mentioned, we were sharing the kart throughout the day, and just a little bit of a skill issue there coming out of the pits, hitting the pedal a little bit too hard, and that obviously caused us to go into a little bit of a whirlwind. But other than that, we then decided to sort of plough our way around the track, try to get used to sort of the power application that is obviously a lot different to the rental karts that we usually drive. And I just wanted to try and set some decent lap times, give myself a little bit of a benchmark to then try and go for and sort of improve on throughout the day. So we come across the line obviously on our out lap with a 48-second lap time, which is very quick, but we also see on the left hand side there 3 other drivers who had sort of done the same thing we'd done, but obviously a lap later. So a little bit of carnage there on the first lap. We got a few drivers up ahead of us to use as a bit of a reference, waving someone through as well, as I didn't really want to get into anyone's way. Obviously, as I mentioned, we're just driving around here on a few practice laps. We're not really trying to hunt for the fastest lap time in the world, just out to enjoy the car, enjoy the day, and it was a very nice day indeed. So we're up behind one of the other drivers here in kart number 5 here, and we're just going to try and follow them along and around the track, trying to sort of find our bearings. You can see on the exit of the final corner, we do just keep hitting the throttle a little bit too hard, and it's causing the back end to step out. Now the annoying thing is, throughout this sort of session, unfortunately, is there was just yellow flags played throughout, and I was lifting off as I didn't really want to go bombing around with yellow flags. Didn't really understand if someone was close to the track, if they were pulling themselves off. So with that, I just wanted to try and be quite respectful through the yellow flags. You can see here on up ahead of us in kart 31 we have Luke Chard Maple, who is running the same number car as us, and obviously he was coming down. He is a very quick driver at Clay Pigeon, so I wanted to try and follow him, follow some of his lines, try and pick up as much as I could from him. But you can see within a matter of 2 or 3 corners he was literally a speck in the distance, so that plan had sort of gone out the window. You can see the yellow flags are still flying here on the left hand side, coming down the start finish straight as a driver outside of his kart. So again, I lifted off quite early, obviously not going to go bombing around the first couple of corners there, and instead we get dive bombed by a driver here on the right hand side. Wanted to try and square off against them a little bit there. You can see they go quite deep into this corner. We try and stick it to the inside, plant the power a little bit too much, causes the back end of the kart to go a bit wayward, and then we leak another place on track to another driver behind. So unfortunately not able to really get up to the pure pace that we want as quickly as possible, but a lot of these other drivers had already done 3 or 4 sessions throughout the day, whereas this was our first one. So we're still pretty happy with how we were doing. We hadn't been going too aggressive and spinning off everywhere, much like we did in the wet when we came before. Obviously that was trickier conditions, but again, just trying to be as smooth as possible, which I'm clearly not doing as I'm going all over the place. So instead decided to wave another driver past, didn't want to get in their way, and whilst I looked over my shoulder, obviously you can't see, I then allowed sort of the time and space for another 3 drivers to follow through, and I wanted to try and follow them along if I could from a bit of a distance, just to see if I could keep up with them. But unfortunately, as I mentioned throughout the beginning and the rest of this video, I just was getting a bit too happy on the accelerator, and this is causing the car to lose grip on the back end, and it's just caused us to lose a lot of time in terms of lap times that we're going for. So you can see we come across the line a 39.956 second lap time, which is clearly not a very quick lap time at all. Trying to take or utilise the curbs as much as possible, maybe use them a little bit too much there as we go wayward on the exit of the chicane there once again, and we get sent down the inside once more. So again, we got a driver up ahead to use as a little bit of a reference, trying to take some nice racing lines here, trying to maximise the track usage as much as we can. Coming into the latter sort of stages of the lap here once again, you can just see how much time we're losing just from being a bit heavy-footed coming out of the corners. And again, as we come back down the start-finish straight, we come across the line with our fastest lap so far in the session, a 38.104 second lap time, which is nothing to sort of be unhappy about. Obviously, if I was racing in sort of an IKR, I'd be in the 177 category, obviously due to being a little bit heavier at the moment as well. So I was pretty happy with these lap times so far. Obviously, our total track time in this car is probably less than about 40 minutes. So just trying to do as much as we can, trying to be as smooth as we can be, and you can see here we are now closing up to one of the other drivers up ahead. So I was quite happy with this. Obviously, we aren't being the complete slowest person on the track, but we're obviously not absolutely bombing it past everyone else as well. But we do manage to make our first overtake of the session here into the first corner, managing to brake a little bit later than the driver ahead of us. Obviously, there's all different classes of karts going around, so some are a little bit slower, so obviously he was in one that was a little bit slower than the Rotax that we're driving. But then once again, as we come into this section of the track, we do get a little bit of a tap from the driver behind. I believe that they just sort of lost their braking zone a little bit, so they apologise. I lifted my hands up to say don't worry about it, or I looked across at them, so I wasn't too miffed about that. Obviously we didn't get completely slammed into, it was just a little bit of a side pod bump. But again, coming down the start finish straight once again, trying to put in a decent lap time if we can. We come across the line a little bit slower this time at a 38.621 second lap time, and we just sort of miss our braking zone there a little bit, going a little bit wide, and this just causes us to just go all over the place really into the first couple of corners. And again, coming out of the chicane, we're just still losing the back end on the kart. So again, we just move over to the right hand side and then get absolutely sort of dive bombed by everyone here. We sort of sat here scratching our head, wondering why we are so slow. But obviously this wasn't really an issue. I was just trying to go around, enjoy the car, obviously, as we haven't really got it out too much, and I was still just trying to get used to it and just trying to be as smooth as we can be, as I was honestly just happy to be out in it, as we haven't been out in it so long. So we come down the start for this straight once again, obviously a little bit slower there to sort of mitigate all of the overtakes that have been done on us, and we came across the line with a 39.456. But now we're coming back down on this lap, and I do believe that this was one of our faster laps of the session and actually of the day. So trying to be as smooth as we can be here, trying to almost find the limits of the braking. Obviously it's a completely different driving style compared to the rentals that we usually use. Instead of slowly applying the brake pedal, we instead were trying to lock the brakes up, and you can see that we come across the line with a 37.787, which was in fact our fastest lap, just as the driver goes absolutely ploughing into the barriers on the first corner. Now luckily this driver was okay, but this did in fact cause the session to be red flagged. As we had already been going around for about 8 or so minutes, this obviously then led to the end of the session, which was a bit of a shame, but obviously safety first, and we then pulled it into the pit lane at the end of the session. Just quite happy with our lap time. Obviously I didn't know what it was at the time, obviously I know what it is now. I'm editing the video. A 37-second lap time is absolutely nothing to be sniffed at, especially considering that I am a little bit heavier and I am a little bit of a lard ass. So honestly, was really happy with this. It was really enjoyable, and now we're going to jump into some thoughts from past Ben to see what he thought after that session. Okay then guys, so after our first session, settling into the kart quite well, really enjoying being out on the track in the dry this time compared to the wet that we had last time. Was getting more and more confident throughout the whole session until right at the end where there was the red flag, which unfortunately cut the session short. But in the meantime, we're going to jump into our second session now, and we're going to see if we can go a little bit quicker. Obviously I don't know what sort of times we've been able to do so far,
So we're just going to get our head down, try and attack the corners a little bit more, try and be a little bit braver on the brakes, and we're going to see what sort of times we are able to do.
With the first session done and dusted then, guys, we are hopping into the second one here, hoping to try and go a little bit faster compared to the first one that we had done. Now, obviously, as I mentioned, we were sharing the kart, so this was the second and final session that I was able to do on the day, and I was really excited to get out. And you could see immediately I'm slamming the throttle down, almost spinning out, coming across the start-finish line. So I didn't really want to do that, so I eased off a little bit here from the driver up ahead. Didn't want to go absolutely aggro on them and probably write us both off. But obviously this was a few hours after our first session, so the clouds had come over, and unfortunately, as you can see here, there's a driver on the left hand side who has had a little bit of an issue with their kart once again. So you are going to see, once again, much like the first session, that unfortunately this session was also plagued with yellow flags, which seems to be the concurrent theme whenever I have a go in this car at Clay Pigeon. It's either raining or there's yellow flags everywhere. So coming down the start finish straight here, we've got a lot of overspeed on the driver up ahead. I sort of go for a half look on the driver up ahead, but obviously as it's not really a race situation, sort of backed out, live to fight another day sort of thing. And again, I wanted to try and attack the corners a little bit more in this session compared to how I did in the first session. Unfortunately though, obviously yellow flags were flying down on this section of the track, which is a section that I really wanted to try and test the brakes on, but I didn't really want to risk flying into that corner as well, especially with yellow flags flying, and that caused me to be a little bit slower throughout this session. So unfortunately for me, the sort of time we got right at the end of the first session was in fact our fastest lap of the day. And as we say this, we've come across the line with a 39.639, and once again, like the previous session, we do have Luke Chubb Maple absolutely flying past us and then leaving us for dust after about 10 centimeters off track, where he's obviously a little bit more skilled in these karts. So I was hoping to try and keep up with him for a little bit once again, but obviously as there was yellow flags, I was lifting off, taking it a little bit more cautiously, as I didn't really know what that driver was up to. But again, as we came out of that section, I then really wanted to try and let the kart rip, try and go for it and try and get on the power as early as possible without absolutely slamming my foot into it. However, unfortunately, I just wasn't quite gaining the sort of grip that I wanted to out of the corners. Obviously we are using quite old used tyres, so obviously this is obviously going to factor into our lap times and grip levels. But you can see here once again yellow flags on the right hand side, so I am taking it steady, didn't want to sort of cause any more issues. But you can see there the driver is on the left hand side, so I didn't want to come barreling around the corner and completely taking the legs out of this driver. So the rest of the lap, however, I felt like I was on for some pretty decent pace, obviously a lot better than I was in the first session. Was feeling a little bit more comfortable in the kart now, and as you can see, I almost completely wrote myself off there in the last corner, getting on the power maybe a little bit too early and sliding all the way across onto the rumble strips. But again, I was gaining confidence bit by bit, maybe a little bit too much confidence there on the first corner, just missing my braking zone once again. But the rest of the lap, really trying to attack the curbs, attack the braking zones, lifting off of the throttle later and later. You can see that I'm testing the limits of the brakes here, going a little bit squirrely into that corner there, the hairpin, just because I wanted to try and really hit into the brakes rather than slowly apply them, but obviously didn't quite make it work out on this occasion. And again, coming through the last corner, just kept getting on the power a little bit too early. This one was a little bit better, didn't quite go completely wayward, and this is also reflected in our lap time, our fastest lap of the session so far, 38.288 second lap time, which is pretty respectable. Was quite happy with this. And unfortunately here though, we do take a little bit too much of the inside curve, which causes the back end of the kart to go sort of squirreling about once again. And then again, we're just sort of slowly applying the brake pedal. Wasn't really sure what was going on this corner, but luckily there wasn't any more yellow flags in this session. So here I was then trying to maximise the track as much as possible, going a little bit wayward here and going all over the rumble strips on the left hand side, which is obviously something that you don't really want to do. You want to try and keep the kart as planted and as smooth as possible. Coming across the line though, once again, even faster lap compared to our last lap, the 38.171 second lap time. And this sort of lap, I was hoping to try and go a little bit quicker, but you can see I take a lot of the curve on the inside at the chicane, and we almost sort of end our whole career there going over the rumble strips on the exit of the chicane, which did shake me up a little bit, but I was still determined to try and power forward, plough on, and get some decent lap times in. So a bit of a scary moment there, but it was still a lot of fun. I was really enjoying driving the car a lot, and I highly recommend it if you ever get the chance to sort of get down and give it a go as well. But unfortunately, as you can see, we come into the last session here, and that was in fact the last lap. So this final session was actually extremely short, and I was quite disappointed with this, as it just sort of cut down our track time, and it was just a bit of a shame really, as I felt like I was getting more and more confident, and I was surprised to see the checkered flag come out so soon. However, that does in fact bring us to the end of this one, guys. If you have enjoyed this video, can you please leave a like on the video down below, as I really do appreciate it. And if you're new to the channel, if you haven't already, make sure to hit the subscribe button, as it really does help me out. I've got a lot of footage coming soon. Obviously, at the time of recording this, I've just completed the double header at Kinetica Raceway for rounds 5 and 6 of the SRK Championship. We've also got Bayford Meadows coming up very soon for Club 73, and as always, down below in the description is my link tree, so feel free to follow me there if you want some more updates. But in the meantime, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care.